Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Rewriting Perception's presentation on our game Zoo Escape. First, allow me to introduce ourselves. James Bunch, in charge of Kismet and helping with Unreal's script. Blake Bundy, sound and visual arts. Brady Lohner, Unreal script lead. Stephen Ferrara, modeling and an Unreal script assistant as well. And myself, Kris Yule, level design. Zoo Escape is a combination of a real-time strategy and a tower assault game. The player will be assaulting the towers of the zookeepers and the zookeepers themselves in a mad rush to escape the zoo and eventually into the wilderness. And now let me introduce James, who will be going over the next few slides.
Thank you, Kris. My name is James Bunch, and I will be going over the unique gameplay, the player goals, and the HUD. Zoo Escape is originally inspired by tower defense games in which the player has to spawn turrets for the cost of resources on a map to prevent enemies from reaching one or more locations. However, instead of placing the player in the shoes of the defender, the player is in charge of overseeing the minions to reach key locations. This essentially houses RTS mechanics, such as using a mouse to navigate the units and the option to collect and spend resources. The levels for the game will be designed around the units the player has access to throughout the game, such as the lion and the monkey. Each unit will have its own special mechanic it can use to navigate the levels the players come across. There will be plenty of opportunities for the player to strategically use their mechanics efficiently, and other times where the player will be required to use these mechanics to move towards the next area. In order to take full advantage of the mechanics and the potential, the player will have different paths to choose from. Some paths might lead the player to designated areas faster with heavy guards, while other paths might take longer with heavier resistances. It's even possible for the player to pick up important resources along other paths not obviously revealed. As previously stated, it is the player's goal to navigate the units from one side of the level to the other with minimal losses. To add to the difficulty, there will be a time limit placed to ensure the player has to figure out a plan and navigate quickly enough to reach the end of each level. If a certain number of units don't reach the end of the stage in a timely manner, the game will end and restart accordingly to the theme levels. In order to progress through the game in a timely manner with enough animals, the player will have to unlock a few cages along the way to get new units and have the potential to buy them at the beginning of each level. In order to progress through certain areas, it will be very essential for the player to hunt for the resources while reaching the destination in time. The current picture shown displays an example of what the player might see on their HUD screen. The first item on the left top corner is an example of a timer, which the player can keep track of the time remaining until the game ends. To the right of that, there is an animal counter that displays the number of animals ready to move on and the required animals required to move to the next level. At the bottom left, there is a highlight to show the unit that is currently selected, and to the right of that, there is a display in which the players can use to purchase units. For more details on the levels and mechanics, I'm going to hand it off to Brady.
Thank you, James, for that breakdown of the game's gameplay, some of its goals, and the heads-up display we're going to be using. My name is Gerald Lohner, and I hope to show you a little bit about the camera style we're going to be using, some of the gameplay mechanics, and a few amazingly crafted images to depict those gameplay mechanics. Here, we're just trying to give you a sense, if not a perfect one, of what our camera placement and style will be like. We're going to be using a top-down camera for each individual themed level. The plan is to be able to allow the player to see the entire level within one camera frame without the need to move the camera, but still be able to accurately and adequately see all pertinent information to devising the right strategy to beat each individual level. We want the information to be accessible to players so they can spend more of their time trying to devise the best possible solution to the puzzle and less trying to remember what they were looking at on the other side of the screen while scrolling to the other side to revisit that information. Moving on, as you can see here, I will try to swiftly break down a few of the gameplay mechanics for you. One of the things we obviously felt inclined to add was a resource mechanic that was the limiting factor in purchasing new units. In a game about zoo animals escaping the zoo, what better way to have and acquire resources than a food system? The cool thing about the food resource mechanic is it also affords us the opportunity to challenge the players. There may be multiple paths that a player can take on any given level, with food scattered throughout. One path may be a much higher risk path with more potential enemies and different puzzles to solve, but would also give the player an increase in the food resource that they collected, and then they could use those extra resources to purchase more animals overall. This mechanic should really provide us with a way of giving the player a sense of give and take within the game. Additionally, you can see here that we're going to be using the mouse for all controls and actions within the game. We really wanted to make unit selection and control as easy as possible for the player. The game is supposed to be more about solving puzzles and devising strategies to beat levels than fighting to remember which controls do what. Here we want the player to be able to easily and comfortably be able to use their animal's special abilities. If the player is controlling a pack of lions, we want them to truly be able to showcase the attacking power that are the lions, or control the more stealthy and agile monkeys through the smaller paths of the level. As the levels get more difficult, the strategy is more complex, and the packs of animals much larger to control, the overall simple nature of the controls will help to build the nature of the puzzle and strategy aspects of the game without really hindering or being hindered by a million buttons to push for a million different actions. As always, thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this part of my presentation, and I will be followed by Stefan.
Thank you, Brady. My name is Ferrara, and I'll be finishing up the overview of Zoo Escape's mechanics, breaking down the game challenges, and the fun added gameplay players will experience. Let's jump right into it. Monkeys will possess the special ability to climb up and disable a tower. By disable, I mean do away with the long-range enemy zookeeper perched in the tower. This is completed by simply selecting your monkey units, then selecting the tower within range. Now this can be combined with other units to say, if you want to take down that tower in a more advanced way, you could take out the zookeeper with the monkeys and then send a larger unit to deal more damage. Now for more basic mechanics, unit movement is done by simply selecting the unit or units by clicking on them and then clicking the desired location. Once this is completed, the unit will move to that location if possible. Last but surely not least, because you wouldn't be able to complete the game without it, is unit purchasing. The player will simply select the unit they wish to purchase. If they possess enough resources or food, the unit will spawn at the closest animal cage on the level, ready to be selected and moved out. That finishes up the mechanics, and now we'll move on to the challenges that you'll have to overcome using these mechanics. You'll have to fight off zookeeper enemies, battle and hopefully disable zookeeper towers, and of course get through obstacles using specific animals. Now in the created added gameplay fun, for example, players will have to solve puzzles on each level, using animal abilities. Each level will also have different paths. Each of these paths represents a different difficulty. This can be seen overhead before each level. Zoo Escape will also feature upgradable animals because as you advance through levels and different themes, the enemies will upscale in difficulty, so the upgraded animals are needed. Alright, and now I'll go ahead and let Blake take us home with the next few slides.
Thanks, Stefan. Now that you have an understanding of the game's mechanics and controls, let's dive deeper into the theme and, in turn, level design. Zoo Escape isn't your everyday hop-the-fence, habitat escapee. These animals are fed up with being treated as eye candy and led by the apes, decide to revolt and use their given abilities to overpower and outsmart their captors. As you can see in these two images, the zoo environment is not the only obstacle that stands in their way. Players will progress through levels within a zoo complex before making their way through heavily fortified industrialized areas, then to the great wilderness that awaits them on the other side, with each theme consisting of about 3 levels. Players will be frequently challenged with different encounters such as path blockers, ground and tower units, as well as resources or weapons they might find or make on their way. Moving on, a couple of comparable games with our design are Robo Defense and Heads of War. As you can see in this image, players are given a purchasing unit mechanic, resource tracker, and score on their heads-up display, much like our current model. Our game differs from these by offering many more routes with varied consequences for the player to balance with a goal of escaping with a given amount of animals in a set time period. Last but not least, we have decided to enter our game into the Independent Games Festival Student Competition of 2013. The due date is currently unannounced but expected to be in March of 2013. The current requirements are that the game is to be made entirely by students, which adheres to our project's development. On behalf of Rewriting Perception Games, I would like to thank you for your time and consideration.